May sinasabi silang sometimes it's the film that chooses you. I would say that because ang experimental film ay isang genre na pilit kong iniiwasan. I guess it's because coming into film and learning about the medium, you're exposed to narrative first and foremost, lalo na our generation. So, ang thinking ko ay, all the way until the end, I would be a narrative filmmaker. Anything otherwise would be brave to a certain extent. Pero ang nakita ko, kung ano yung features or aspect na naging tama siya sa paggawa ko ng pelikula na akin talaga, the kind of genre that speaks best or expresses what I want to say best. Nangyari na lang in the process. Alam mo yun, parang you start off with a concept, you write what you want to say, you put things in that you want people to see. Tapos, ang nangyari sa akin, I tried it in narrative. This is what I know is right, this is what everyone else is doing, this is what I think can say what I want to say. Pero sa dulo, hindi siya nag-work. Kahit anong gusto kong gawin, or gusto kong palitan, hindi talaga. Alam mo, there are some things in life na hindi talaga. There are certain things that you want in life na hindi talaga meant for you. And I guess narrative, that was it for narrative, for me. Which is not a bad thing. Because experimental film, experimental cinema, lalo na sa bansa natin, is missing a voice. Even though it's there, you can find it if you look for it. But alam mo yun, it should be a stronger voice. And more people should try to explore it and see that there are so many more ways to explore, to try and say what you want to say. Kaya yun, napunta ako sa experimental. Ang first exposure ko to experimental films, of course, would be my experimental film class. Usually when people would talk about experimental films, all of us would shy away thinking, art ka, or that's not meant for me. And they would never really bother going into understanding what experimental film has to offer. What struck me the most was when, of course, our professor explained in the simplest of terms what experimental was. If narrative or story, you'd go from point A to point B. Point A, you start somewhere, character develops, that's your point B, ending, character is a new person, for example. Ang experimental would only have one point, and it would just explode. That's how I understood experimental. I mean, it's not supposed to be, well, it actually can be anything you experiment it to be. You can have 1 point explode, you can have 5 points back and forth. It's up to you. And as its term is, experimental, all you can do, all you are allowed to do, you're allowed to do anything, experiment in its name. So you can experiment with your story, with your medium, experiment with yourself. What can you do? What can you say that you never expected from you or the medium? Parang ganun. And there are many ways to experiment, as stated. You can also experiment with your audience. You can experiment, how does this certain transition or certain shot, how will it affect your audience? How will it affect you as the filmmaker? Kaya siguro it explodes in that sense. Going to Ugkat, ang gusto ko lang sabihin dun ay, in development, in the steps that we take to go forward in life, in our country, in our society, you should never forget where you are rooted from. Not to say that your roots are traditional or uncivilized, but if you know the core of your identity, that will help guide you to where you want to be. I see a lot of the times here in the Philippines that we want to be first world, let's say. So we copy the things we see in other countries, but we don't know where that's coming from or how to contextualize it in our country. Because there are certain things that you want to happen in your country, but it won't match because we're a different culture. We're a different culture. We're a different group of people. We live by different rules. We live in a different climate, for example, different kind of topography, geography, all those things. So alam mo yun, you have to understand who you are in order to move forward. Basically, that's it. The process of making Ugkat was kind of different. It was an experiment in process as well, and experiment for me as a filmmaker. Going back to what I said, I always knew that this was how you make a film. Step 1, step 2, step 3. But with this film, I couldn't do it linearly. So, number 1, you start with what do you want to say and how can you say it. So, I wanted to start with identity and myself. I started thinking about who am I, where did I come from, what culture did I come from, and how do I tell that to people. Syempre, I don't want to put myself in the film because many considerations. Ang naisip ko ay, ang tatay ko ay galing Cotabato, Davao, Cotabato City in Mindanao. And that was a side of my family that I never got to know. And I wondered why. Why could I never know the story of that side of my family? I've always known my mother's side kasi Batangas lang sila. I can go there 3 hours away, visit them, talk to them. But there's this other side of myself that I never knew. And that's what I wanted to focus on. So in terms of like actors, for example, I don't think it would be right for me or for the film if I got someone known just for the mere fact that, oh, watch my film because this person is acting in it. That would defeat so many purposes for the film that I wanted to make. So for that aspect, like who would play the roles, who would symbolize the message that I wanted to say, I thought it best na there are what we, the tribe, the Lumads, they're a group of indigenous brothers and sisters in Mindanao. There are many tribes within that group of people. And I thought, hey, they are our roots and we don't really talk about them as much as we should. A lot of us here in Manila don't even know that they exist. Or a lot of the times we just think, oh, indigenous people, and have just one thought of one generalization of who they are. And I don't think that's right. So for myself, I wanted to research on who they were. Maybe I could say that I belong to them, even though I can't really say that. But you know, it's a sense of unity, a sense of community that we're missing out on. And that was one factor that led me to think that they should represent themselves and I shouldn't get someone to represent them for me. I shouldn't pretend that I should represent them for them. It's what we call self-determination for our indigenous brothers and sisters. So that was right for the film, that was right for me. A lot of the times we have to listen to what the film is asking for, or which I think is overlooked a lot of the times, ayun nga, because we think that our film should be a particular way according to what is the trend. Anyways, going forward, cinematography-wise, I didn't focus too much on its cinematography, but of course it's a big part. What was important for me were wide shots, because I wanted a bigger picture of what was going on. So a lot of the times we jump from a wide shot of the landscape of the Philippines, of the rural areas, the trees, the brown soil, the rich brown soil, the trees, the trunks, the houses, that a lot of the times we see that all the time. We've grown used to seeing that, thinking, Pilipinas, the beauty of the Philippines, yes. But then every day we're surrounded by a different kind of jungle. You have the buildings, you have the highways, the cars. So I know it's a simple binary opposition of two different kinds of worlds. But a lot of the times you see that they don't really match, they don't really go together. And then that's where I thought, why not? It's not that one is better than the other. The two can, parang they can work together towards something greater. But as I see it now, it's like we're banging ourselves against one another, and I think that's very unnecessary. So, in terms of cinematography, I thought it nice to parang juxtapose one against the other. This is our past, this is what it is now. Is this the kind of development that we want? Do we want to get rid of those trees and replace them with buildings? Do we want to replace the rivers with roads full of traffic? Parang ganun. That's where cinematography helped a lot. In terms of sound, I would say this film is also a film of the marginalized, talking about both women, indigenous people, and I wanted to focus on sound. But I think that's a section of the film that I think I need to work more on. But I wanted to play with music and sound design in a sense that when you make a film, it goes two ways, it's audio and visual. But I guess the dominating thing that we see nowadays, it's purely visual, whatever catches our eye. We tend to forget that there's an audio part to it, oral sense to making films. It's not just the dialogue, it's also the little taps that you hear or the little bells or beeps, stuff like that that we overlook. But you know, if you turn down the volume and just watch a silent film, you know there's something missing. And I like to put the two together, you know, like if a film without sound, there's something missing. In the same way, a country without its identity or like acknowledgement to its identity, there's something missing in that as well. Just a little thought. I found that my process, again, as I mentioned earlier, was kind of mixed up. I went into shooting the film without a script because I didn't know how to write it yet. I wanted this, I wanted that, and then I'll put it together at the end. And I thought that was wrong, but that's how I told my crew na, okay, just shoot what you can, shoot the landscape, shoot the people, but because I know how it should be at the end, but I can't put it down in words, in sequences, sequence 1, location, time of day. It didn't need that, which I thought was true to my process as a filmmaker, I guess, and true to the film because, you know, you don't want to waste time making something that it didn't need. Towards the end, I had the sequencing that I wanted, and then came how to put it all together. So the first part, you have the juxtapositions of the different landscapes, and then we come to get to know the matigsalog, the young lady that chants her pangayaw, the young lady that dances, the old lady that dances, and then she is followed by what we call this, I guess, the city girl, the urban girl, and I thought the one way to kind of bring that out, the message that if you forget about your identity and certain kinds of development comes in and you can't stand for who you are, that's when something inside you changes. So I thought about putting the images on top of the girl, but I felt like these changes go deeper into who you are. It's not just, this is me, this is new information coming towards me. It goes a lot deeper, and a lot of the times we're not aware of that. So I decided to do what we call a double exposition, double exposure. So you can see that there are cranes coming out of the indigenous girl. There are trees branching out of the city girl. So it just goes to say that these changes that we're not aware of can penetrate us and our identity more than it should. And then in the same way with the city girl, there is that identity inside of us that's just waiting to branch out, to come out. It's as simple as that, and I hope that it was conveyed better through that form of editing and kind of graphics, motion graphics, that term. In general, regarding our creative processes, I think it's just important to get to know yourself as a filmmaker, get to know what works for you, what is right for you, and don't forget to listen to what is right for the film. There are a lot of influences nowadays. You can get them online through books, magazines, television, and it will tempt us to try and find new ways to do things and find ways to do it better, which is always good. But deep down, it's always a good start to know who you are as a filmmaker, and what works for you won't always work for someone else. What works for you won't always be trendy, or it won't always get you fame. But I don't think that's the end all of when you make films. It's the opportunity to be able to tell a lot of people certain messages that I guess are often overlooked, or a story about yourself that you'd like shared to more people, or the stories of our fellow countrymen, countrywomen that are also overlooked. And film is the perfect medium for that, and you are also the perfect filmmaker for whatever that film is.
Mosina si kantanog mandula simpido to otono mangayono yo mosina si kantano mangayad-ayad kidono kok kidi buto marot yo mosina si kantano mosulo dinayon kumo anggam mo hari kuno mangayad-ayad kido nako kido blangi utama marot no himu sinasikan tanan og kailig o kaingot yo